Yeah, so really, really nice.
Okay. Welcome, everybody. It will never be that loud again. Welcome, everybody. I have just a couple of things to say, and then we're going to go into the formal side of the meeting. But first of all, welcome to the WTC Communication Center Canteen. And many of you have not been here since the renovation's been done. And I'd like to just thank Chris Chismore and his recreation staff, FODA, Friends of the Arena, who invested the funds for the paint, the lights, the ceiling. The TV, of course, came from the community, but the fireplace, you are kind of our first group to enjoy this, other than the Pilates group that was here the other night. So that's the background with that. And yeah, well done. And this is a formal meeting. So I know everybody's feeling comfortable and that, but it is a statutory meeting. So there are certain rules that we must follow. I'll explain them in a minute, but by way of knowing where we're heading here, this is both meetings are statutory public meetings with a detailed agenda to follow. So there you go. So with that being said, I will go to our agenda and call this meeting to order. It is Tuesday, July the 28th at 5 p.m. We are sitting in the canteen of the WTC Communication Center to hold our meeting tonight, and we have two statutory public meetings. Item number 2.1 on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda, and I will ask Councillor Cardy to move, Councillor Crapper to second that the agenda of the public meetings held on July 28th, 2026 be adopted as presented. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. That will take us to number 3. Does any council member have a declaration of conflict or pecuniary interest? Seeing none, I will speak for a few moments and I'll explain the order. What will be unusual for you tonight is that we won't be talking, council. We are here to listen. We have speakers. We'll be taking notes. And then at the upcoming committee of the whole meeting, we will debate. But there'll be no interaction for us except at a break to say, hello, how are you doing? Thank goodness we didn't get that rain today. But our role is just here to listen. This is your meeting of the public, to be heard by the planners and to be heard by each other. So I will chair the meeting. Hopefully there won't be anybody out of order. There's no reason to be angry or yelling tonight because this is where you have your say. We have received many letters already, and all letters received up to including one that came in from, I think, Mr. Kadrinkle this afternoon. I think that was the last one I got. They've all been circulated in red. So feel comfortable that you can certainly get up and speak again, but the council has all read your letters and they will form part of our planner's briefing note to us in the next couple of weeks. So I think that's what I have to say. And with that, I now turn it over to the clerk for her official part.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. This is a public meeting under the Planning Act. The Corporation of the Village of Westport received a zoning bylaw amendment application, which was deemed to be a complete application on September 4th, 2025. This zoning bylaw amendment application is a proposed site-specific amendment to comprehensive zoning bylaw 08-12 under section 34 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990. For the property municipally known formally as 48 Bedford Street. The purpose and effect of the amendment is to rezone the subject site from residential type 1 R1 zone to 2 site-specific residential type 2 zones in order to facilitate the proposed development of 2 3-unit residential dwellings and 1 carriage house with an additional residential unit. The existing lot is proposed to be severed through a future severance application. Zoning relief is requested to alter certain performance standards such as yard setbacks, lot frontage, parking, and accessory building height. Notice was provided by publishing in the Review Mirror, which is of sufficiently general circulation in the area to which a proposed bylaw would apply, and that it would give the public reasonable notice of the public meeting in accordance with section 4(7) of the Ontario Regulation 545-6 of the Planning Act. Notice was also given to prescribed agencies via email per section 4(9) of Ontario Regulation 545-6 under the Planning Act. Additionally, notice was posted on the village's civic website and social media platform. Any person may attend the public meeting and or make written or verbal comments in support or in opposition to the application. In the event that you are unable to attend the meeting but wish to submit written comments, please submit comments to the clerk's office. If a person or public body would otherwise have the ability to appeal the decision of the Village of Westport to the Ontario Land Tribunal, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the Village of Westport before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the Village of Westport before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal, unless in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. And if you already haven't signed in, there's a sign-in sheet for both hearings tonight, if you want to be kept apprised of the decision. Okay, turn it back over to you, Sue.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. So the speakers will be beginning with the village planner, Mr. Pence. He will be followed by the proponent, the Dornicamp's planner, and then you will have an opportunity for your questions. We ask you to come to the podium, couple of reasons. We're live streaming, as you can see on the screen, and this contraption in front of me called an owl is what is picking up the message. So we need you to come to the podium unless you need to stay seated, and that's fine. For personal reasons, we need you to state your name and where you live. So we're going to have village planner, the Dornicamp planner, and then open up for questions to you. Everybody all right with that? Okay, there are seats at the front. I can take a break right now, team. You're more than welcome to move up on up and be comfortable. But we'll leave that with you. Mr. Pence, over to you.
So my name is Arjun Soor, and I'm joined by my colleague, Mr. Steve Pence from Novatech. We're going to present a brief overview of the zoning bylaw amendment for unaddressed Bedford Street, which, as you know, is adjacent to 48 Bedford Street and is also known as 50 Bedford Street. So if we can go to the next slide. So I won't read through this preamble. You already heard from Ms. Westgate already, this preamble. So we can go to the next slide. So the subject lands are on the north side of Bedford Street. The lands have a frontage of about 29.32 meters and a lot area of approximately 2,117 square meters. The site is designated general urban in the village official plan, and it is zoned R1 in the village of Westport, zoned bylaw 08-12. You can go to the next slide, please. So this slide shows the site plan that was submitted by the applicant's proposed development. The applicant, as you know, is already here to present, so I won't go into too many details. But what I will say is just that the applicant is proposing to rezone to the R2 zone, and that would permit multiple residential dwellings. They're also seeking site-specific relief to permit an additional residential unit above a carriage house and to alter performance standards, including yard setbacks, lot frontage, parking, and building height. So if we can go to the next slide. So this is the purpose and effect statement. Once again, this was already read out by Ms. Westgate, so I think we'll just skip to the next slide. So these are the zoning amendment details. We have put this together to provide a snapshot of what the zoning amendment is for. I'm not going to go through every single one of these in the table, but that kind of provides a snapshot of it. And the applicant will probably provide more details on this in their presentation as well. We can go to the next slide. So in terms of next steps, you've already heard already that this meeting is an opportunity for members of the public to provide comments and to ask questions of us, and to hear from the applicant as well, and to ask them some questions as well. A decision on the zoning bylaw amendment itself will be made during a future council meeting. So we go to the next slide. So that concludes our very good presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Dornikamp?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My name is Jason Sands. I'm a registered professional planner, member of Canadian Institute of Planning, and I'm here on behalf of Mr. Dornikamp as it relates to the zoning amendment on Bedford Street. We've heard different addresses. We generally know where it is: 48 Bedford Street, 50 Bedford Street, unaddressed Bedford Street, regardless. It's a vacant lot on Bedford Street, immediately adjacent to the west of municipal address 48 Bedford Street. The proposal and reason or rationale for tonight's meeting, of course, is zoning bylaw amendment application, as you heard. There's a component of the application or the overall development plan that would be a severance, a consent application to subdivide the property, in addition to instilling reciprocal easements to allow for essentially one driveway as opposed to two, to allow for that lack or reduction of accesses onto Bedford Street. So we've not filed the consent application. It's an application tonight only focused on zoning bylaw amendment application. Proposal, as you know, is to sever the property, approximately an 850 square meter parcel and a 1250 plus or minus parcel. I'll get into the details later. Approximately 30 meters of road frontage split in half to approximately 15 meters of frontage. And we're put that single drive or reciprocal easements in place for access. Proposing to rezone, as you know, from R1 to R2 site specific to allow for essentially village as a purpose-built rental in the village itself. So the proposal is a total of 3 buildings, 2 at the front, 1 in the rear. We're calling it a carriage house in the rear for a purpose of discussion, if you will. It's not defined as that. The buildings in the front are 3 stories in height, 2.5 stories, depending on how you count the basement, with 3 dwelling units proposed in each, 2 bed, 1 bath in each dwelling unit. And in the rear, a garage at grade with 2 vehicular parking stalls and a single unit at the top or story with 1 bedroom and 1 washroom. Next slide. This slide is an image as to where we're talking. Westport Pond to the north, property outlined in red, Bedford Street to the south. You can see the institutional uses, residential uses, etc., in and around the area. We'll get into those in greater detail in the future. For those of you who are familiar with the site, it's vacant, undeveloped, no buildings currently, and it is serviced with full municipal water and sewer servicing at the right of way on Bedford Street. Slides. Just some photos for those of you who aren't familiar. View from Bedford Street on the left, view of the subject property, again, same from the right. Some additional photos to more provide the surrounding context. I mentioned earlier, it's in the urban boundary, or sorry, we heard that earlier. It's in the urban boundary, so it's close to the downtown core, which would be to the east, of course, of the property. Immediately adjacent to the property to the east is a single family dwelling seen on the right, top right corner. To the west, again, single family dwelling, residential use. To the south, St. Edward Catholic Church and school, so institutional uses, and commercial district within walking distance of the property, more so to the east, which is your shops, community uses, open space, etc. You've seen the slide on the previous, but I'll walk through it, just pointing at the screen if I can. It's an L-shaped parcel, as you saw on the previous slide. So it's a bit of a unique shape as it relates to an infill opportunity. The severance is proposed to run directly south to north across the property and still create an L-shaped severed lot and a rectangular shaped retained parcel. The buildings are proposed at the front are those 2.5-story builds, each accommodating 3 residential dwelling units with a central drive to get into the rear yard, which is the proposed on-site parking. 3 on-site parking stalls for the 3 units, 3 for 3, with landscaped open space in the rear of the proposed retained parcel. On the severed parcel, continuing is the 3rd building that's proposed on the site. And as I mentioned, we're calling that a carriage house, 82.8 square meter footprint of a building, 2 garage vehicular parking stalls in the bottom at grade, with a small single bedroom, single bathroom residential dwelling unit on the upper story. I'll get into this more so in the future, but the reason and advice from a policy point of view as to why we think it's appropriate is essentially the configuration of the lot. It's one that has a significant side yard that still exists to the east, which gives additional functionality for the purposes of landscape open space, on-site amenity, etc. Next slide, please. So the next 4 slides, I suppose, are floor plans and elevations. So these are the elevation details for the proposed buildings at the southernmost portion of the site, showing what they would look like from Bedford Street. These are the floor plans, lower level, main floor, upper story. They're very repetitive, 2 bed, 1 bath, in each of those stacked 3 and 3. This slide shows the accessory or carriage house building from an elevation perspective, as well as floor plan. So you can see in the top right of the screen, you see the garage at grade with the staircase up to the accessory unit on the 2nd story with 1 bed, 1 bath. And I just zoomed in to show detail of the actual floor plan of that accessory carriage house building. So from a policy point of view, getting into the policies that we look at when considering application for zoning bylaw amendments in Ontario, we start at the highest level, which is at the provincial level. The provincial planning statement of 2024, most recently updated in 2024, gives us the direction as planners in what we ought to be looking at and instilling from a good land use planning point of view. There's a host of policies in the document. They're generally high level and not specific to every municipality, given the fact they're province wide. I've put some policy reference in. For example, the goal of establishing a complete community is a vision of the province as opposed to bedroom communities, employment areas, etc. The idea is mixed use employment, complete communities. Residential intensification is a big policy at the provincial level, focusing on infrastructure that's already in the ground, infrastructure that's already been paid for and is being paid for by current taxpayers, as opposed to going to greenfield developments and putting in new expansions to water and sewer treatment plants, putting new infrastructure and road networks in place. There's a policy there are policies that direct for that. And of course, in our assessment of this property on Bedford Street, we're targeting and achieving the policy directive of those specific policy sets. There's also some ecological function and biodiversity and maintaining natural heritage systems policies from the provincial level. And again, there's also further details later on into the county and the village policies, but at the highest level, they're also incorporated. And as you know, Westport Pond is immediately north to the abutting rear yard of this property. And we're proposing to ensure that that is maintained and protected and not adversely affected by this form of development. Carrying down to the next level of policy review or rigor, if you will, when looking at zoning bylaw amendment applications. The United Counties of Leeds and Grenville is the upper tier in this jurisdiction, as you're all aware. And they have a host of policies that get into a greater level of detail when looking at residential intensification projects. So again, high level, they're trying to generate and push residential intensification in urban service boundaries as opposed to greenfield or unserviced hamlets, for example, that don't have that infrastructure in place. Things like avoiding traffic and visual impacts, appropriate density scale, building site and design, complete community we talked about, residential intensification in urban settlement areas, I mentioned, efficient land use and structure. So again, if you haven't seen it, we authored I should have mentioned this on the onset, I apologize. If you haven't seen it, we authored a planning justification report. It's about a 35-page planning report that assesses all of these policies in detail as it relates to this project. This is obviously a snapshot of that, and I'd encourage you to take a look at it for greater detail that I might not be able to touch on today. But in summary, based on the assessment that we've completed of the OP at the county level, the project is consistent with meeting and conforms to the policies at the county. Getting into the greater into the more refined aspects of the village's plan. So here's the property, as you can see, and my colleague here already noted that it's in the urban boundary, designated general urban, as seen on the screen. Slide. And this is where we get into some of the more detailed aspects, so that the village plan's got different sections and growth management planning, residential intensification policies, infrastructure planning, etc. So just to highlight quickly, section 2.3 is obviously very applicable in this situation because it's a residential intensification project on an existing lot of record in your village. So the desire of the policies in your OP, in your official plan, are attempting to achieve a residential target of 20% new development coming in the form of intensification as opposed to a greenfield development. Lost my.
Not really sure what happened there.
Flash deck, so
You don't have the slide deck?
I do.
It's either you or me first.
Grace, yeah.
Chris, can we turn them? It's hot.
No, yes. If you can hear. But you're back.
Starting now, just.
Still live streaming, so it's fine for online.
I think we're starting. Thank you. Pushing that. It is. That's why it's so hot. You said
If you want me to speak, just looking at my screen.
Yeah, when it comes to the sections that you need to display, hopefully I'm back up again, but if you want to go through your policy parts.
So, just on, while that.
Oh, we lost him now.
Go ahead, I'll get it back up in a minute.
So the section 2.3 of the village's plan, official plan has some strict criteria that you look at from a policy point of view when considering residential intensification or infill projects. So broad range of housing types are desired is one of the higher level policies in the OP. As I mentioned on the onset, this is a purpose-built rental project. So from my understanding, one of the only purpose-built newer rental projects in the village in some time, that's proposing to bring that to market, as opposed to as a conventional, purchase parcel. So I talked already through the 20% growth located on municipal services, mentioned municipal servicing is available on Bedford Street. My understanding through consultation with the village, there's capacity from a servicing point of view, both water and sanitary, to accommodate and service the property. Encourage re-subdivision of parcels for efficient development patterns is a policy of the plan. It's a unique policy, in my opinion. It encourages re-subdivision of existing severed lots or existing lots that have been created in former years by plan of subdivision to allow for things like affordable housing opportunities or redevelopment of purpose-built rentals, for example. And this is exactly really what's being planned on this case. Obviously, oversized lots or ones that are underutilized, if you will, can be expensive in the sense of purchasing and then redeveloping. And the ability to hit the policy directive on this front of further subdividing to make things a bit potentially more affordable and achievable is something that I think is a great policy, and this plan happens to be aligned with very well. There's a policy that speaks to may consider urban design guidelines. I'm not aware of the village, having urban design guidelines in effect. That being said, you'll see based on some of the renderings, as well as our relief that we're being sought through the zoning amendment, we're bring the buildings tighter to the road than what you would conventionally have if you stuck to the setbacks required by the zoning bylaw. And we see that as an attempt to make sure that the streetscape aesthetic on the north side of Bedford Street is consistent and it's appropriate. And that the front steps on a 2.5-story build are aligned visually and architecturally, for example, with those that exist on a 2.5-story single-family dwelling that exists on Bedford Street. So we've purposefully attempted to design this in a way that is consistent with the existing development in the infrastructure planning, wastewater services, section 3. Your slide ahead of you. Again, very high level and quick, but we're not proposing to expand servicing and run new municipal infrastructure way out to greenfield sites to accommodate this growth. It's infill. It's a project that meets those policies. Housing affordability, section 7, there's a policy in the plan that really speaks to housing affordability and promoting aging in place. And this is one thing I think that the village, again, tipped your hat to the point of rental opportunities in the village, purpose-built rentals that are well-designed, well-insulated, well fire separated, meeting the Ontario Building Code of 2024, and that they are allowing for somebody who might be getting older, that doesn't want to maintain their larger property with grass, etc., to rent a property and stay in the village itself, as opposed to having to move into a Lanark Lifestyles, for example, or into a bigger urban center. Next slide, please. Section 9, land use designation. You're aware at this point that it's a general urban designation in the OP. And section 9.3, one of the policies that this plan gives a good lens to, is to consider residential development when you're in the general urban area. And here's a list of the policies that we see appropriate. So generally, the village is looking for a range of housing opportunities and housing typologies, from low to medium to high density projects. This project is proposing 7 residential units on a lot that is just over 2,100 square meters in size. That equates to 33 units per net hectare in the way in which density is calculated. The village official plan has density calculations for low, medium, and high density projects, and 35 units and greater is high density. 22 to 35 is medium, and 22 and lesser is low. We're proposing a medium dense project, if you look at the strict policy test from a numbers point of view, in accommodating 7 residential units. So generally speaking, there's low density projects around that have 1 or 2 units in them. This is a medium density project according to the official plan. Residential infill is encouraged where servicing capacity exists. Great, we understand we have servicing capacity. The plan looks to seek compatibility in built form, architecture, and streetscape. I touched on it, but streetscape is what we think we've done a decent job at in terms of limiting the number of driveway accesses, bringing the buildings closer, putting a built form together that's consistent in a 2.5-story built form with that exists. From an architectural point of view, to be honest with you, I don't even really want to comment because we haven't designed the buildings. I don't know if it's going to be red brick, limestone, what it's going to be. We're not there yet. So understanding architecturally, the massing, the design, what the aesthetic of the building is going to be is to come. Traffic, parking, open space and tree retention. Again, we're proposing in excess of one parking stall per lot, per unit on the lot. So 8 spaces for 7 units in total. If you look at it as a whole, is being proposed. Open space, there's landscaped open space and on-site, and that'll function as landscaped open space and on-site amenity in the rear yards. Height and tree retention, the buildings are towards the front of the property, it's a cleared parcel. There will be some tree removal at the rear, there'll be new trees planted. The exact details, there's not been a tree inventory completed by an arborist, and there hasn't been a landscape design completed by a landscape architect to figure out exactly what's gonna happen, but there will be a bit of that through the process. High traffic developments shall be close or are to be close to county roads. We have not received any concern from the village to date that Bedford Street can't accommodate this volume of traffic by this infill project, and given its proximity to main roads. Adequate screening when abutting non-residential use. We abut residential use on both sides of east and west of the subject property. To me, this is more of a policy when you're trying to infill and intensify an area of the village that might be next to a commercial unit or an institutional unit with an outdoor play yard for children's space or a schoolyard or something of that sort. Partial servicing versus full servicing. Good news, full services. Medium density and high density developments are permitted by way of zoning bylaw amendment. We recognize that. We're here before you this evening for a public meeting garnering public input to proceed potentially through zoning bylaw amendment process to allow for medium density development. In short, our summary as defined in the planning justification report, this proposed development conforms to the policy vision of the village as defined in your official plan. From a zoning bylaw point of view, subject property zoned R1. And as you'll see on this slide, there are a handful or majority of residential R1 zone properties on the north side of Bedford Street, right in this area. You'll also see there's a M2 zone property, which is the manor to the left, to the west, on the north side, the open space associated with Bedford Pond, and you've got some varied uses of institutional uses on the south side, which are the commercial uses further to the east. Now, next slide into the zoning relief, specific relief in what's being proposed. This is for the retained parcel. So the retained parcel is the one on the west side, which is proposed to be rectangular in shape with 3 residential units at the south end, and then parking and open space to the rear. The current zoning bylaw requirement is 1.25 parking stalls per residential unit. We're proposing 1 for this retained parcel, 3 parking stalls to support 3 residential units. From a parking area location setback point of view, there's I would call it a unique provision in the zoning bylaw that has a separation distance between the parking on site to the actual building on site. And they aren't proposed, or they aren't envisioned to be any closer together than 6 meters. We're proposing that they be closer than 6 meters to allow for a compact form of development, put the parking in close proximity to the building, and have the drive aisle down the center of the property. Minimum lot area requirement, 890 square meters. The retained parcel is 850 square meters, 40 square meters short. Just by comparison, 48 Bedford Street, so the actual property address is 48 Bedford, single family dwelling, is about 430 square meters. So less than half of what is proposed for the retained parcel on this project. Minimum road frontage requirement, 30 meters. I said previously, we have about 30 meters to date for the existing lot of record, proposing to subdivide that by a consent or severance. So roughly 14.7, 15 meters of frontage for severed and retained. The reason, in our opinion, for the frontage requirement is to allow for adequately developed parcels that are consistent. They have access for driveway and yards, front yards, etc. We're proposing 1 driveway for the 2 lots, not 2 driveways or 1 for each, so there would be 2. So it's a central drive with reciprocal easement that we are of the opinion that it's consistent with meeting the intent of that frontage requirement. This next one is the one I sort of tip my hat to, if you will. From a front yard depth point of view, 6 meters is required for any new build in an R2 zone, which is 20 feet. That's completely inconsistent with the existing developments along Bedford Street. So you can see, for example, when you look down the streetscape, that the houses and the front porches and the steps are much closer than 6 meters to the street. And we're proposing to half that requirement at 3 meters to allow for a consistent streetscape aesthetic on that north side of Bedford Street, and allow for compliance or conformity with the official plan policies of the village. The interior side yard setback, R2 zone is 6 meters. You'll see on the plan is we're proposing 1.8 and 5.6. So lesser than 6 meters. The 5.6 is actually the larger interior side yard is on the interior of the property where the drive aisle would be. And the 1.8 meters is proposed on the outside, if you will, the east and the west sides, abutting the neighbor residential units. Again, 1.8 meters in an urban situation for a 2.5 story built form, in our assessment, is consistent with what you see through the village and what you would see in a new build point of view. There's still opportunity for stormwater, for swales, to allow for the lack of intrusive overlook, and allow for access around the property, albeit in this one, it's got central access being proposed. There's also, from an intrusive overlook point of view, a careful design of these units has been given to window placement. And as you'll see on, if you go back, but maybe later, you'll see the window placements have been carefully considered in each of the dwelling units on the 3 stories to only being one window on this first and the second stories. So there's not significant glazing that's proposing to be overlooking onto neighboring properties. That was purpose. The last provision on this is privacy yards. So a 3 meter privacy yard requirement for minimum depth from a common parking area. We're proposing 2.7. Again, to allow for everything to be consolidated on that site. Maybe I'll be quicker on this one. The severed parcel, the area conforms, it exceeds the requirement. The ARU, so we broke it apart. The top provision for the garage, the ARU, the carriage house, whatever you want to call it, is what's being proposed to be amended through this process to allow for an increased height. 5 meters is the max height, and we're proposing 7.6. So accessory dwelling units capped at 5 meters. We're proposing a second unit, if you will, or a 4th unit in this case, unit on the 2nd story. So the increased height of that building is 7.6 rather than 5. And I spoke to overlook and the landscaping around it already in my slide deck. The same provision for parking and access location setbacks I spoke to earlier. Frontage I spoke to earlier. Front yard spoke to earlier. Side yards, same thing, 1.856 spoke to, and privacy yards I did the same. So that's a breakdown of what's being proposed from a site specific point of view on each severed and retained parcel. Public comments. Firstly, thanks for the interest in the project. We've done lots of these and sometimes there's no public comments. We get through a process, we get it built, and then we get lots of complaints. Because they don't like, the public doesn't like something. So thank you for coming out and providing input now, because this is where we get our opportunity to make change to a project, to make it better, and to try to accommodate what any desire somebody may have to put it into effect and become a reality as we go through the approval process. Some public comments we received. I know they came in up till an hour ago. I did the presentation on the weekend, so there's a few that are outstanding, but these are some of them. There's a drainage ditch in the western side yard, we heard. Thank you. Noted. We're cognizant of it. We've been working with the village through that process and understanding how it'll be maintained, how that will still continue to function and alleviate any water in the ditch on the north side of of Bedford Street. It's not a registered easement on the property. And we're working to understand how it can function and continue to function in that same similar capacity as it does today. Sewage capacity concern in a village. I think that was generally like a high level comment from the village point of view in terms of sewage system. And if we approve this project at 7 units, it might degrade or negate the ability for somebody else to have capacity in another area of the village. Noted, thank you for the comment. We understand through staff that there's capacity in the village from a sewage systems perspective. And as you saw through the policy review, it's the desire of the province and the county and the town, the village and to make sure we're using those. So we're proposing to service this with municipal sewage services. 3-story development will create intrusive overlook into the rear yards of the neighboring properties. Great comment. 3.5 stories. My first comment is we're trying to not build a 3.5-story building. We're trying to build a 2.5. So the basement height just meeting the Ontario Building Code requirements for windows and openings, and having a proper ceiling height in the basement. And so that's why we're talking a 1/2 story and then a story and a story. So 2.5-story build, which is not inconsistent with other builds. We're not varying height to allow for a tower, for example, or a significant increase to the height to allow for this to happen. I also mentioned the window placement, and we can get to that, go back to that, but window placement was carefully designed. And again, the accessory or carriage house unit is carefully designed as it relates to that open space, that L-shaped component of the property. So we tried to mitigate from an intrusive overlook point of view the best we could in fitting in and accommodating residential infill on this site. Drainage runoff concerns during construction. So I take this one as a separate concern from that ditch that's on the west side. During construction, silt fencing, drainage, runoff, etc., will be all managed the same way in which any other project is done and built out in an urban area. The owner, the great news for this project is the owner has experience in all of that. He knows how to handle and how to build, and I do not expect anything less from this property. Reduced property values is another kind of underlying comment I think I picked up on in some of the public comments received. Respectfully, planning applications, it's not a test of a planning application. We don't look at should we approve this or deny this based on whether it's going to increase taxes or decrease that assessment goal or increase this assessment goal. So although members of council may have that thought in mind, I just urge you not to make a decision on value of a property from a planning perspective. We're looking at it from the merits of a land use planning perspective. The conclusion, proposed infill project on the subject property and our assessments consistent with the provincial planning statement, the highest level of planning rigor in the province. We think we have developed a project that conforms to that to the next level and beyond. Same with the United Counties Leeds and Grenville as well as the OP at the village. Great policy tests of residential infill projects, creating complete communities, servicing on full municipal services, etc. We have done that assessment, done the review, authored a report, and we're of the opinion that it conforms to those policies. The severance application, I put it on here just as a FYI, because I'm not here to try and mislead anybody. I don't want council to think that this is being planned for some other reason and then this is going to come in later date. It's not been yet submitted, the consent applications are decided upon by the county, but we need to get the zoning in place. This is the key. Zoning has to be considered in effect before you could sever a property. So it is anticipated that a future severance would be filed to allow for that division of land. So in our assessment, this project and this site-specific zoning amendment for this property represents good land use planning and meets the tests as prescribed in the province. Happy to take any questions.
So thank you, Jason. I probably asked you not to go too far from the front. But the members of the public are going to come up and take the podium to ask questions, either of you or of our planner. But thank you for that really in-depth presentation. The link for your document and the whole proposal is on the website, but it's a large document. So we are also working from the website rather than printing it, but it's all available. I saw it circulating on Facebook this week, so I know it's out there for you. So you can see what we've got is the initial perspective, our brief from village planners, and then the in-depth brief from Mr. Dornekamp's planner, Jason. I've sat through many of these. I don't know if I've ever seen a planner anticipate so many questions and give such a thorough briefing. So thank you, Jason, for that. I could see that the crowd was listening to what you had to say, but not to take away from the importance of questions. So if you have a question, everybody needs to be respectful. Come up, say your name, where you live, ask your question, and then we'll turn the podium over to likely Jason to answer your question. It's not about arguing tonight. It's about getting your question on record so that the planners can consider it when they come back. So that being said, I'll open it up for anybody who's got a question. Oh, could you come forward? Oh, you weren't here when I gave the first instruction. Would you mind coming to the podium, saying your name and your address? And that's because you're live on Zoom and the little machine here in front of me needs to pick you up.
Good evening. My name is Monica Ferenczi, and I and my partner Pierre Carrière are the property owners at 46 Bedford Street, which is on the easterly boundary of the back end of the subject property. And our property extends from 44 Bedford all the way to 58 Bedford in the back area that the presentation has referenced as open space. Those are deeded lands and they are our property for application. This is an oral submission to the proposed site-specific zoning amendment to the property listed as lot 17 N/S Bedford Street, Plan 169, being Part 1, 28R15286, and part of lot 16 N/S Bedford Street, Plan 169, being Part 1, 28R15599, Village of Westport, currently a vacant lot, situated between 48 Bedford Street and 52 Bedford Street in the Village of Westport. My comments on the proposed amendment will fall into two categories: procedural and substantive, as related to the content of the application. I'm a new resident to Westport, having moved here in October 2025 with my partner, purchasing the property at that time, which is adjacent to the subject land on the east and the north boundary of the property at the bottom of the L portion of the upside down L-shaped subject land. We would like to state at the outset that we support development on the subject land, as it is currently a vacant lot, and we would very much like to see a continuous sidewalk in place to support walkability on the north side of Bedford Street from 48 Bedford Street to Concession Street. We would also like to see water drainage improvements to rectify the swale currently in place on the north side of Bedford Street on the westerly boundary of the subject property, which drains stormwater directly from the street onto private property, resulting in flooding and creating a continuous active swamp bog situation on the subject property and on our property. Heavy rainfall such as last night keeps this as a constant situation. Procedurally, the following steps in this application did not occur. As a property owner adjacent to the subject property, we did not receive notice of the proposed development via mail, which is a requirement under Ontario's Planning Act. 2, there was no sign posted on the subject property to notify the public and residents in general of the proposed zoning amendment application that was submitted to the administration of the village on September 4th, 2025. This is also a requirement under Ontario's Planning Act. 3, in the public notice, which is how we found out about the zoning amendment application, it incorrectly states the subject land as being a different property owner's address. 4, the public notice indicates that the application has been deemed to be a complete application, which is deeply concerning. However, I did hear comments in the presentations that there are other pieces that have not yet been applied for or completed. There is no acknowledgement of the application as complete on the first page of the application, and it is unknown if fees were paid, for example. Fine. There are 2 property owners listed in the application, and no property deed is included to support the exact owner's name as it refers to the legal description of the subject land. One owner listed has contact information redacted, so one cannot even contact them to discuss the application. I had to resort to online research and several phone calls before being able to contact one owner listed on the application. 6, there is no authorization by any owner to submit the application. The agent of record letter found within the application authorizes from one owner to prepare, submit, and obtain a building permit only. The application therefore contains no authorization for the agent to bring forward a zoning bylaw amendment application to the Village of Westport. 7, the pre-consultation report with the village planner from 2024 is not a public record, according to the response I received from village administration when I inquired for a copy. This is also concerning. 8, the application appears to be missing a page 9 of 17, which may contain additional required information that the reader is not privy to. For example, is there a section 11.4, 11.5, 11.6? Now to my substantive comments. The application is missing the following critical components. 9, the correct description and features of the property and the changes that have been occurred to it over the last 5 years. Those are sections 7.1, 7.2, 8.8, 8.9, and 9.1. 10, the concept drawing of the proposed structures and the site plan do not contain the information required for a project of this magnitude. The digital copy contains numbers that are too small and illegible to discern for it to be a helpful document to the reader. 11, there is no site inspection report from Village Public Works and no confirmation by a specific study report to indicate that the existing water and sewer infrastructure is capable of handling the volume of wastewater from a proposed 7-dwelling project involving anywhere from 7 to 14 to potentially 28 persons living at this property at a maximum capacity with 2-bedroom units in each dwelling, functionally flushing toilets and taking showers every day, not including car washing and pets on the premises. So when we talk of human density, it is not planning density, but human lived density, which is a concern. 12. There is no environmental impact assessment study report, which is a requested study for the United Counties of Leeds and Granville severance application process, which was mentioned. The subject land is within the Village of Westport drinking water protection zones as posted at Lakeview Drive and Concession Street and on Pond Street and Main Street, the 2 main roads entering the Village of Westport. Currently, a herd of deer forage on the subject land, and their migration and feeding pattern would be disrupted. There appears to be no consultation evidence with Rideau Valley Conservation Authority regarding the lands across the Westport Pond, a protected natural fish sanctuary. 13, the application refers to open space as an amenity and feature to future tenants of the dwellings, but the site plan appears to imply that our property is the open space feature and disregards that there is private property surrounding the land on the east, west, and north sides of the subject lands. As the PowerPoint demonstrated, the northern boundary is indicated as Westport Pond. That's our property. This requires further clarification as the Westport Village official plans designates our property as an R1 property and urban. The proposed density in the application plan has no real credible open space with the planning that has been proposed. There are also setbacks indicated on the site plan to Westport Pond, which lines delineate across our property. 14. While accessibility and affordable housing are a key consideration in both the Leeds and Granville Counties official plan and the Westport Village official plan, there is neither in the application. There is mention of accessible parking in the concept drawing, but the dwellings show staircases to the main entrances, which are not an accessible feature. And I want to correct that all of the properties on that section of Bedford Street are at street level for main entrance. While there is mention of parking, the dwelling shows staircases, which are not an accessible feature. The parking plan does not mention compliance with emergency vehicle access requirements either. 15. The height and style of the proposed dwellings do not conform to the existing streetscape of that section of Bedford Street and would be the tallest residential buildings in the village. Loss of privacy, increase in noise, impact on property value are all considerations that are worthy of further study. To have dwellings not in keeping with the style of housing currently in that block of the village would reproduce the fractured streetscape like the condominium buildings at Main Street and Rideau Street, impacting the quaint features and characteristics of the core of the village of Westport. In conclusion, this submission requests that the committee and council ask the applicant to resubmit the application with required reports as per due diligence and evidence to support the application with a reduced density plan to maintain the R1 designation of the subject land, which already allows for multiple dwellings on the property. Thank you for your consideration of the above information. A copy of this oral submission is available for the record of frequency. And I would be pleased to assist with the applicant in any other further questions.
Thank you, Monica. So, I'm gonna go to them, so you can sit down. Thank you very much. So to the planners, Steve and Jason, you were taking notes, you were typing. Do you want to respond? I think you might be aware of some of her concerns already, because I've seen some emails go through. Is it, how do you want to move forward? That you want to respond, or you want to discuss and then bring that concerns to council? Yeah, I threw about 8 options at you, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name is Steve Pence. Some of you may know me from other public meetings here in the village. I'll take an opportunity to address some of those comments. There's a lot in there. We do have a copy of the written submission, so we will rest assured that we'll take all those into consideration. But a couple things that I heard that I wanted to just kind of respond to here tonight. I think a couple of the first items I heard was that there was some procedural concerns about how notice was given. The Planning Act allows for a different means of giving notice. It is not a requirement to post a sign, and it is not a requirement to send letters to property owners. It's an option, but there are other options as well. And the village is consistent in the way they give notice of zoning bylaw amendment applications, which is to post an ad in the newspaper, and as well to give notice to prescribed agencies, and that's exactly what was done. So I just wanted to clarify that there was not a procedural error by the village in giving notice for the public meeting. A couple other things that I heard, I think were related to some of the planning concerns with density and accessibility and urban design, those sorts of things. We'll review that kind of comment as part of our review and analysis and deal with those comments in our report to council and to committee with our recommendation. And I'm not sure if Mr. Sands would like to comment in any way with respect to what we heard tonight, but I just wanted to make sure everybody here understood that what we're hearing tonight, whether verbally or provided to us in writing, will be addressed through our letter recommendation to the village. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. And Jason, you're gonna get Kim to bring up the site plan. Go ahead, Jason.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you, Monica, for those comments. Appreciate it. I just wanted to firstly start off by including this slide because I misspoke. You own land around and to the north of the subject property. That was me misspeaking in the sense when I described it as open space. It's open space zoned according to the village zoning bylaw. Where your parcel at the front is R1, the parcel and around to the north is all OS associated with the Westport pond. So I do apologize for that. I hope you don't take offense in the fact that I called your land open space or publicly owned. It's privately owned, zoned open space. So sorry for that. Thank you very much. Just a couple other points quickly, and I'm not to try to rebut everything and extend this meeting.
We'll get to that.
The accessible units, as Mr. Pence noted, will be looked at through the review and designed in accordance with the building code. How that complies with the building code is to be determined, and that detail will come as follows. The environmental impact study, again, it's not something that we were requested of through the preliminary approval, pre-consultation approval process by the counties and by the village to review and support this application, given the proximity to the Westport Pond. That's why there was not an EIS or EIA done in support of the application to get to this stage. No confirmation from village staff that servicing capacity exists. Again, I expect that to be a comment that comes forward with the planner's recommendations to council and committee at a future date. The pages that are missing in the application forms, again, that's not me. If you have a chance to look at our plan justification report, I don't know if that's public, how that's been released. Your any questions, concerns, comments, my contact info is online. You can find them very easily. So I'll leave it at that for
Okay.
now. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Thank you, Monica, for bringing that forward. Any other questions? Did you have a question?
Yes.
Yes, please. I know you'd like to stay where you are, but you can go up there. Okay, and just your name and where you live.
That council and other members of the public can perhaps hear me, but
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. We could sit you up on one of those stools if you want. Yeah, could you want to get him a stool? He's got it if he needs it. There you go. Don't fall off the stool though. That feels familiar.
Just for the record,
Give us a little.
my name is Dave Algie and I'm the adjoining owner to the west. And I am one of those that is critically impacted by this proposal. The issue of the protocol and whether that has or hasn't been followed here is also of concern to me. Because my reading of the law for consent applications would indicate, as this previous speaker indicated, that notice should have been published on or a notice should have been posted on the lands. And in addition to that, that adjoining owners are entitled to specific notice. I set out in my objection how I got notice. And that was in fact grapevine notice. And I've indicated the impact of that, of course, in receiving notice in that manner. And that is, of course, it prevents me from obtaining professional advice to assist me with respect to this proposed application. The objections I've made, I have with extensive reasons, I've provided to the village. I provided copies of the objection and reasons to those directly involved in the application. That is, of course, copies to council, copies to the applicant, which I assume found its way to the planner, and not to his planner, because I say it seems to me a number of those objections that he's come down through are objections that I have raised, of course, to the proposal. I'm not going back through those objections tonight. And the reason why I'm not doing it, of course, is that their comprehensive reasons were set out in my written objection. I ask, of course, that that objection be part of the official record. I don't believe it's necessary for me to repeat those on the record tonight. They're already there. Like the previous speaker, I'm not opposed to reasonable development of those lands. In fact, I think the lands are an eyesore. They sit there unattended, weeds grow, no one pays attention to it. So as I say, I'm not opposed to it. What I am opposed to is unreasonable development. And my opinion is that the proposal is unreasonable. It's an overbuild. And it is not reasonable densification. You hear about that, and I have, of course, the application and all the materials in support of it. Densification, it complies with policy of densifications. Well, my submission is that it doesn't comply with policies of densification. The new proposed zoning bylaw amends what you can, of course, what you can build in relation to the R1 zone. And it's my opinion that what it's doing there is providing for reasonable densification. And that densification, of course, now permits in the R1 zone that a double with 50 feet of frontage, 69 feet of frontage is no longer required, provides for a double to be constructed again on a lot with 50 feet of frontage. The minimum required for a single family dwelling. It is also my opinion that the R2 zone, which is a new zone that is being provided in the new zoning bylaw, it of course provides for construction of a triplex. It provides for reasonable densification. It requires a 60-foot lot. Two triplexes require 120 feet. The proposal here, of course, is to construct two on approximately 100 feet. I say that is not reasonable densification. The new R2 zone and the standards that it establishes is to conform with that policy with respect to densification. There is one area that I want to enlarge upon in the objections that I set out. And I do that to assist the council in its decision making. And that relates to the drainage ditch and the photos that I provided of it. The photos, of course, are there to assist council with where the drain from Bedford Street is into that drainage ditch. I also provided a photo that indicates the iron bar at the southwest corner of the subject lands. I did not at that time measure from that southwesterly limit to the drainage opening from Bedford Street. I did that yesterday, and what I find in doing that is that the distance to the west limit of that drain is 3.96 meters. So we're talking 13 feet approximately. I also measured the distance to the east limit of that drain, and I found that to be 15.5 feet. I had in my original objection set out the difficulty with the proposed side yard in relation to the drainage ditch. And those measurements, in my opinion, confirm the problem. And that is, of course, that building with this current side yard proposed of 1.8 meters, that building will be over top, a portion of the building will be over top of the drainage ditch. My comment is, of course, is that the 1.8 meters, as I indicate, will place the building as I've indicated. The proposed side yard has to be increased. And when you start to increase that proposed side yard, of course, it presents problems with all the rest of the proposal. I just want to give you an example of that. You know, at the present time, the site plan that has been provided, and it's been alluded to by the planners, and that is the driveway. With the compacting that is being done here, with the requirements, the standards for an R2 triplex, the only way, of course, that compacting, that they can provide the driveway to the rear yards was, of course, to have with respect to the westerly proposed lot, a right of way over the easterly one. And with respect to the easterly lot, a right of way over the westerly lot. But once you start to compact that further, there are even greater difficulties created by it. My opinion is that critical information is lacking. And that is, of course, is the relation of that proposed side yard to the west side of the building and the relationship to the drainage ditch. You know, the only mention in all those materials with respect to that drainage ditch, it's referred to as swale. Quite frankly, I don't know whether it's a dry swale, a wet swale, or a drainage ditch. I don't know the legality of it. I don't know if it is in some way a municipal drain. Certainly, the village drains substantial water into it. One of the photos, I've mentioned what I did provide. Unfortunately, I didn't provide a photo of the asphalt paving on the Catholic Church parking and school parking. But if you see that in a storm water pours down because it drains northerly. And the result of that is, and that's why that basin is there, west of the proposal on the south side of Bedford Street. All that water flows into the drainage ditch. All the water, the storm water on the north side flows into the drainage ditch. Water from a subject parcel flows into the drainage ditch. Water from my lands flows into the drainage ditch. And that, so that, as I say, the lack of that is not helpful to council in decision making. And in fact, it impedes council in its legal duty to make an informed decision.
Mhm.
It seems to me that council at this point, of course, has two alternatives. It could deny the application because in fact, it doesn't have the information it needs to make, of course, an informed decision. The alternative is to adjourn the application to some point down the line so that this information can be provided to council.
Thanks, Dave.
Um,
Anything else,
Those
Dave?
are
Anything else, Dave?
all our comments I have.
Okay, that's great. That's very, very helpful. There is, Dave, I'm not sure if you were here at the beginning, but just to remind everybody that we are listening tonight. We're not sitting as a decision-making body. We're listening to planners, your comments as our planners. The committee of the whole meeting on September the 1st is when this comes back for us to have the first glance to debate it. So there's not an either or here tonight. There is coming back the 1st of September to committee of the whole. And if we've got questions, then we can direct that they get more answers. So thank you for your presentation. Yeah, thanks, Dave. Okay, thanks, Dave. Thank you very well. Good, good. So I think in the interest of time, because I don't want people to not get what they have come to say, we'll get everybody in, but I'd like to offer the opportunity to anybody who's not already given a written submission, because if everybody starts leaving because they've got other commitments, I want them heard. So is anybody here tonight who has not given a written submission that would like to make comments at the public meeting? Yeah, yes, I see some head nodding.
Well, I haven't submitted a written submission, but I also want to.
Oh, okay, just
Like
give
to
it
sit back and-
2 secs and see, get somebody who hasn't
Yeah.
written it in yet so that they can hear it. Mark, are you getting up?
Sure.
You've not put a written submission?
No, I've
in?
not.
Thank you, sir.
My name is Mark Parlin. I live at 99 Main Street in the village down on the main. A couple of things that sort of I have questions on and sort of caught my mind. There's been a lot of talk about this drainage ditch, but yet I heard the planner say there's no easement for it. So really, is that true? Is there an easement for the water drainage on private property? In this drainage ditch swale that everybody keeps talking about? Because really, when we think about it, in the grand scheme of things, if the village is intentionally discharging road water into this drainage ditch swale and there's no easement, they can't do that. So the fact that they are draining that water, they need to fix that problem and not drain it onto somebody's private property. So, that's a good question I've got. It sounded to me like there is no easement for that. So the fact that other people's property is draining water onto it, that's a huge issue to start with. Another thing I heard was that, this is gonna be the tallest building in Westport. It's not. I live at 29 Main Street, and if you count my, widow's peak on top, I'm a 4-story building. So, there's already stuff that goes on. There was another talk about, municipal, fire department being able to put out, having to be able to service those things. I no longer am, but I was on the fire department for 25 years, and Barry can attest, we're not driving down a laneway to put out a structure fire. We're fighting it from the road. So the laneway really has no bearing whatsoever on dealing with a firefighting or any application like that. The one thing I've got to say is that, the one thing the village needs is rental properties. I mean, we can't say that enough. We talk about there's nothing for, as people age, being able to stay in the village. Just because there's stairs, there's a lot of people that can still go up and down stairs. So there is options there. I mean, we need rental properties in the village. You know, the one thing I gotta say about, you know, I know the Dornicamp family, they've been in this area for years and years. They are reputable builders. I've seen work that they've done. I've worked in houses that they've built. And I know that it's going to be
Okay,
a piece that's there. So, you know, I just, we wanna say that at the end of the day, we need this for the village. The village needs rental property, so,
Yeah.
you know, we've gotta go on from there.
good point. Thanks so much, Mark. I just didn't want to get personal with
Yeah, no,
proponents. So, thanks so much. Anybody else who's not put a written, please come forward. Who's not put a written submission in? Please come forward. Thank you so much.
So you're in my city, hi, my name is Sandy Prentice. I live on 4 Mill Street in Westport, on the other side of the pond. And, I'm thinking that this is a really positive, opportunity for the village to have rental properties. But I also, as soon as I saw it, I was concerned about the, what is being called this drainage ditch. For me, it was, the river that was always there. It was just the river on the other side of the road. I was not thinking whether it's private property or not, because rivers just go through properties. And whether it's if someone owns it or not, the river has created its space there. So, I wanted to speak for the water and the trees, and, there are a lot of trees on that property, and I'm part of a group that goes around trying to increase the tree canopy in the area and plant trees. So when I see that there's a nice strip of trees by a water way that all those trees are not only sequestering carbon, but they're soaking up a lot of the water that would be flooding areas. So and I was really happy to hear from the builder's planner that they're already considering that mature trees will somehow be accommodated and some will be replanted. And they even mentioned that there was not already an inventory. So I would like to see that there is some type of an inventory there, so that we can maintain what's needed in terms of helping not only let's call it the sequestering of the floodwaters as well as the sequestering of the carbon, and the shade and the canopy, and the homelands for all the creatures that live there, even if it's not all of those deers that would be nice not to have roaming the village quite so much. So that was I'm happy for the possibility of a residential development in the infill. And I think that years ago, when we filled out the forms for the strategic plan, it was said we want infill more than green space. So this is a good opportunity for infill, and I would like to see that the trees and the water be really well addressed
Thanks.
in the development, regardless of how many units go in there.
Thanks, Sandy. Thank you. Thank you so much. Anybody else? Sorry. Devallier, go ahead, and then Keegan.
Hello, my name is Delvi Lewis and I live at 2 Center Street on the pond. Yes?
Just a little louder, please.
Okay, we'll try. My name is Delvi Lewis and I live at 2 Center Street on the pond. And my concern is the environment, the trees, the animals, not so much the deer, because they eat my trees. But the first speaker brought up the idea of an environmental assessment. And whether or not you're required to do so, I would really appreciate if you did that. Because then you would know how you're affecting the pond. The pond feeds the lake. it feeds all of us, whether we know it or not. And that's my only comment. Thank you.
Thanks,
I
Delvaya.
look forward to the building. I'm not against it. I just, for the planet. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Delvaya. Egan.
Even a chair, do I get a step stool?
Um,
I'm Keegan, Greg Keegan Gray. I live on Mountain Road, little stone house next to the car wash. I wouldn't say I'm directly impacted with this in terms of where I live, but I've managed 17 rental properties in Westport. I've managed 17 rental properties in Westport, so I feel I'd just bring a little bit of a different insight into this, from a business point of view for the developer and everyone else. It's not a fun game, residential renting in the village. If you actually look at the numbers, it's slowly declining for someone to actually own a rental property. If you look at property taxes in the past 3 years, they've increased 15%, and you're only allowed to increase residential by 2.5%, which has dropped to 2.1 this year and drops to 1.9 next year. From the developer side of things, I know that I have to look at 12 to 20% return. For someone like me, I would like to see more numbers in terms of, if you come here and you tell us that it's going to be $1,500 for the 2-bedroom, you're going to get a lot more support. But I also know that that's probably not going to happen in terms of how much it's going to cost to build everything, and for you as a developer to get your investment back. I also just want to put it out there that we do need residential rental units. When I put up a residential thing for lease, I must get at least 80 responses from people, which is amazing for me because I get to pick and choose, but it shows me that there's a need for residential rentals in Westport. And I just want to put out there that be careful not to scare away too much of the development, because we need it. And although we need to support it happening, I also feel that developers need to be conscious of and considerate of Westport in terms of the people who surround the properties. Very tight-knit community, and choosing an option rather than choosing an option that's more considerate than going to the neighbors and asking their permission and letting them know something is going to get a big backlash in Westport. And that's just my advice. My 2 cents is, if you're going to do something like this, you need to be considerate to everyone, because word gets around quickly and people support each other here.
Thanks, Keegan. Yeah, thanks. Anybody else who's not put in a submission yet that would like to make some comments? Okay, then we're opening it up to people who have already made comments. Thank you, sir. Thanks for your patience.
Worries. A lot of it's already been discussed, so I won't, keep everybody hanging around to go over the same things. Plus, I have submitted a written one, so everyone has that, so.
Good, thank you. And just your name and your address again,
Yes,
please.
so my name is Keith Cooper, and I live at 48 Bedford, and the real 48 Bedford, not the one that was first advertised in the paper and then amended. Not the one that keeps getting referred to on various screens, but, so yeah, so we are literally like right next door. And I'm, I'd also like to start out by saying I am, very pro-development. I spent a good chunk of my life in the development industry. So I have nothing against the development industry, but I also understand that things have to be done properly with good ideas and good planning, and not trying to do end runs around process because they think they can get away with it. I've also worked with developers who have tried that. I'm not saying these developers are, but I'm saying I've had my experiences. So anyway, we've gone through sort of all this, and like I said, I'm going to repeat what other people have said, and I will talk about the need for more affordable housing in the area. Certainly that's true, and especially rental stock. I don't think this is it. This is market value rental stock, nice to have, but it's not affordable housing, and that's indeed our goal, finding other models like the tiny homes for seniors that they're doing in Kemptville, or the veterans tiny homes that they're doing in Kingston. Some of the other initiatives like turn older, larger homes into suites for independent seniors. So seniors can actually, age in place. So like there's lots of ideas out there that can be tried and done here in Westport. But this is not that. This is simply, how many units can we get onto one R1 lot? I appreciate that this is an information session, so I'll skip through again some of the things that people have mentioned earlier. I will note from Monica, like when I went through the original application, I noticed that it was riddled with errors, omissions, and misrepresentations. Under section 8.8, developer stated there are no current or previous applications under the Planning Act, which is obviously untrue since they severed the lot that I bought. So there's at least one other Planning Act. That was just 4 years ago. And I had to actually delay the closing because of this waiting for the severance. So, I'm aware of that as well. Under section 7.1, the application was none for easements, and we've heard that that may or may not be. So everyone's talking about the drainage ditch, which seems to be the issue du jour. I'll move on from that one. Under section 2, the site description is listed simply as flag shaped. So, section 2 sets out like it should, please describe the site, what has it, and flag shaped is, I suppose it's a description, but it's completely omits the critical fact that most of this lot is covered in uncompacted road construction infill, and completely conceals the vulnerable low-lying swampland at the rear, which in this plan is supposed to somehow turn into recreational space. But if anyone's ever been back there, it's a swamp. And this subject lot is all road fill, or most of it's road fill, as is ours, because that's how it was built. You can go back and look on Google Maps back to pre days. You can see that it was much more low lying, and it's swept all the way up to the back, and then someone dumped in 6 feet of road fill. And trust me, when my wife tries to garden in the backyard and pulls up chunks of asphalt, we know that the road fill is there. So then under section 7.8, they claim the storm drainage will be handled by existing and proposed swales. Packing this much onto that lot is just, they talked about, well, we're going to design this into it or design that into it, but at this point in time, that's all pie in the sky. That's all, yeah, we're gonna make this wonderful. We're gonna get a rocket ship to the moon, but we haven't even seen the drawings yet. And then, relying on basic swales next to municipal ditch without an engineering study, recipe for localized flooding. As it stands now, a stormwater event sends significant amount of water overtopping the sidewalk in front of our property and the adjoining property. And of course, it soaks it up. Now, our property is of course lower than the subject property. So if they build on it, we're gonna be even lower, which means more water is going to, head over towards our property. Development has called for no plans for snow removal, and given the site is far too small to accommodate accumulation. They make no plans for emergency access, and I appreciate that maybe they're not gonna fight a fire from, the back lane, but the law still states there has to be emergency access. There are certain limits, there are certain measurements that have to be in place. I think Monica spoke just about the number of people using municipal water and sewer and 7 new laundry rooms. I'm not gonna get into everything, but essentially their plan, any major obstacle will be addressed through anticipation. They say the plan has the quote unquote potential to include water conservation techniques. They say they will incorporate a design to manage stormwater, but provide no such design or options. They anticipate that quote, future residents will exercise multimodal transportation options, which really means they'll have to walk because they won't have no parking spaces. They also anticipate that it will be responsible for the construction of a sidewalk extension, although not committing to it. Again, when they speak of stormwater management, they use phrases such as, quote, the design and construction of the building has the opportunity, rather than offering actual design or plans. And on a personal note, I would also like to add that the proposed minimum setbacks, particularly on the side yard, are far more than a minor variance, given a 3-story apartment will be a couple of feet from our fence, but that's one of the lesser issues here. And I think that the final thing here is to me, what this is an end run around the planning process. This is basically it's an attempt to create a subdivision without having to go through the process and other requirements of a subdivision. When Watercolor had to do theirs, see how you feel about watercolor regardless, but there were plannings, there was a process, there was a procedure, there was environmental assessments, there was engineering studies. There were the things required to make sure that the village and everything was protected. You know, now you're gonna do this, and they're doing this, I think, to avoid the comprehensive mandatory technical studies that a formal plan of subdivision requires. I mean, they're basically taking a piecemeal approach, which is not legal. This is sort of like an end run around that, because where are the certified hydrological studies? Where is the environmental impact assessment for the rear swampland or Westport Pond? What is the capacity study for the sewage and water infrastructure? I mean, basically, there's just so many flaws, so much unknown, so much, and like pie in the sky anticipation that, oh, don't trust, just worry, don't trust us. We are going to do it well. You know, the council, I know, again, this is not the decision, but under section 53 of the act, subsection 1, a land severance or consent, and this is what's being planned here eventually, is they're saying, okay, we're gonna do this, then we're gonna sever it. So again, this is like piecemeal development. So I mean, this is not necessary for the order of development of municipality. The law says that you can say no, and that you can send it back and ask for a plan of subdivision. Section 2 of the Planning Act mandates that this council shall have regard to provincial interests, including the protection of ecological systems, the efficient use of water and sewage services, and the orderly development of safe, healthy communities, as the developers representative mentioned. From his aspect, or his perspective, of course, they're going to live up to that because they're going to do everything right. That's taking a law on faith. If they do believe in this project and that it will not bring harm to the village, then, you know, prove to us by withdrawing this application and filing a plan of subdivision, or doing all the requisite forms of the requisite studies and such, so that everybody is up to speed on what's going on. I think that's just due diligence and common sense, and also protects the village from potential liability by eventually approving a process that is flawed and based on that infactual material.
Thank you so much. Okay, folks, we've been at it for about an hour and 40 minutes. Is there anybody else who has something that they would like to say? I'd like to wrap it up by 7. So just so we're kind of thinking, I'm not saying don't say anymore, but we have another public meeting after this as well. So on this subject, does anybody have anything that they would like to say at the public meeting? No?
I'd like to say a couple things.
Go ahead,
I
sir.
haven't prepared anything in any way, shape, or form.
That's okay. We just need you on Zoom. So your name and address, sir.
I'm David Brandelji. That's my dad. I don't live here, but I've been in Westport since I was a little boy. We used to have a cottage up on New Borough Lake. My dad bought Bedford Street as his retirement property, and it's a lovely spot. He's done an incredible job with the sheriffs and stuff. I obviously know that that lot should be developed, yes. But should it have 3 triplexes or whatever this thing is called on it? No way. The lot's the size of a shoebox. Yes, it should have a property. It deserves to have a building put on it. But it's ridiculous to think that you're gonna build a structure or that many structures in a property that small. I know you guys need the tax revenue. I know there are rental properties that the town needs, but Westport is such a beautiful little community. There's gotta be another way to do this that doesn't do what this is going to do. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else have a comment to make at the public meeting? All right, we have time. I just wanted to kind of give an indication that we didn't want to be here till 1 a.m, but we have time. I know many of you have got lots of opinions. All right, then we're going to call it if nobody else has anything else to say. Okay, then it comes back to you.
Yeah, and then we move on to the next public meeting, which is the.
Okay, but we don't adjourn this. We just move to the next one. Is that right? We've never done 2 back to back. So we are going to now move to the next statutory public meeting in relation to draft 3 of our comprehensive zoning bylaw. Putting that out for people to know that we're changing gears. Again, we are in a kind of a listening mode. We have seen some written submissions. We've read them. This also will be coming forward in the next couple of weeks for a decision by council. But Steve,
You first.
And Kim will be first.
Okay, thanks. Your Madam Mayor. This is the public meeting under the Planning Act. The village is proposing to repeal and replace the current zoning bylaw with the new zoning bylaw. The purpose of the proposed new zoning bylaw is to bring the bylaw into conformity with the official plan and to ensure that the bylaw is consistent with updates to the Planning Act and other legislation, including the new 2024 provincial planning statement, and to address matters of local planning interest. Notice of the statutory public meeting was provided by publishing in the Review Mirror, which is of sufficiently general circulation in the area, and which proposed bylaw would imply that it would give public reasonable notice of the public meeting in accordance with section 4.7 of Ontario Regulation 545-06 of the Planning Act. Notice was also posted on the Village Civic website and on social media. And notice was also given to prescribed agencies via email for section 4.9 of the Ontario Regulation 545-06 under the Planning Act. Any person may attend the public meeting and or make written or verbal comments in support or in opposition of the changes and the drafts. In the event that you are unable to attend the meeting but wish to submit written comments, please submit comments to the clerk's office. If a person or public body would otherwise have the ability to appeal the decision of the Village of Westport to the Ontario Land Tribunal, but the person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Village of Westport before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the Village of Westport before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body may not be added as a third party to the hearing of an appeal before the Ontario Land Tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there's reasonable grounds to do so. Again, there's two sign-in sheets, so this is a different matter. If you want to be apprised on either, please put your name on those sheets.
Thank you very much. And so same sort of terms of reference for our meeting. Our planner will go first, and then we'll have the opportunity for questions from the public. So please go ahead.
Good evening, once again, everybody. My name is Steve Pence. I'm a senior planner with Novotech, working with the village on a number of planning projects over the years. The most recent of which is the preparation.
We can't hear you, Steve.
Oh, louder.
or not?
The letter? The file is loud enough, but I'll start again. How about that? My name is Steve Pence. I'm a senior planner with Novotech. We are planning consultants of the village, and we've worked with the village on a number of different planning projects over the years. The most recent of which is the undertaking of a new comprehensive zoning bylaw. Tonight's public meeting is a presentation from myself and my colleague Arjan to present the details of, to some degree, present the draft bylaw process, where we've been and where we're going next, and to provide a little bit of context to this process. First slide, please. Starting with this slide, this is just a little framework slide to talk about how this bylaw falls under our requirements as a municipality to do land use planning. Starts with the Planning Act on the left, regulates how land use, this is more of a legal document as it's legislation by law. The second column talks about the requirement of the provincial planning statement as being the planning document that gives the rules to the municipality as to what kinds of things they need to plan for and how they should do their planning through their official plan and zoning bylaws. The third column moving over from the left is the county's official plan. You heard mention of that earlier today. In this two-tier system that we have, there's the county of United Counties, Leeds and Grenville that has an official plan. All planning decisions made at the local level have to be in conformity with that plan. And then moving further to the right, we have the village official plan. This is a document that myself and colleagues at Novotech worked on. It was adopted a couple of years or more ago, which is the planning policy document that guides how development should occur in the village. And all decisions made at this local level have to be in conformity with that plan. And then finally, in the far right is the zoning bylaw. That's the step we're at right now. We're at the process of preparing a new bylaw for the village. That bylaw would repeal and replace the current bylaw. And so tonight's meeting is for your opportunity to ask questions about the bylaw. We've been through a process. We met with village council early on in this process to talk about the bylaw process. We developed a draft, we had an open house that was held here in the village about a month or so ago, I think it was. We had some residents attend that open house forum to have an opportunity to speak informally with project representatives. And I would say even prior to that, we had another open house, which was an opportunity for the public to meet with project staff to ask questions and not get into the details of what the bylaw says, but just to be informed of what a zoning bylaw can and can't do, and the process that's about to unfold. So here we are today. Next slide, please. I've talked a little bit about this already, about the official plan. This is a project that we undertook a couple years or more ago, which is the overriding planning document for the village. It's used to manage future growth, protect natural and cultural heritage resources, address potential health and safety concerns, and ensure financial health. And there's a number of themes down the right side there that were dealt with through that process and are outlined very clearly, I believe, in the official plan. Next slide, please. This is Schedule A of the official plan that's in effect today. It sets out various land use designations in the village. And for each of those land designations, there's a number of policies that apply. And next slide, please. This goes into a little bit more detail about the different designations. So here we have the general urban, all the yellow areas in the village have been designated as a general urban area. And in the zoning bylaw, that translates into designations that implement the official plan. So we'll talk more about that in a moment. If we can go to the next slide. Here we have the village core and harborfront designation. This is the downtown core of the village, designated in the official plan as the harborfront and village core. It's the historic downtown, not too different than what you have today as your central core in the village bylaw, but this is the downtown core designation. Next slide, please. And we have three other designations. We have a major open space, sewage treatment facility, and rural designation. These are other designations in the OP. All this to say is those designations in the official plan now gets translated into a zoning bylaw. And the zoning bylaw that we have in place today is from 2008. And with this update that has to follow the update of the official plan, we will have a bylaw that properly implements the official plan and is current in terms of planning standards. Next slide, please. And I think this is maybe where Arjan was going to pick up. And I'll leave it at that for the moment. And Arjan, I'll turn it over to you.
So my name is Arjan Soor. I'm a planner with Novatech as well, working on this zoning bylaw. So some of you would have already kind of heard this information already, but I think it's helpful to bring it up because it does provide kind of an overview of what we're actually doing with the zoning bylaw, what exactly the zoning bylaw does, things like that. And for some of you who may not have attended our initial open houses, you may not have heard this information yet. So what is a zoning bylaw? A zoning bylaw is the primary tool that's used by municipalities on a day-to-day basis to actually implement the policies of the official plan. And so the zoning bylaw must generally therefore conform to the official plan. Zoning bylaws are generally comprised of things like definitions, general standards for the development of things like parking or accessory uses, list specific uses permitted, corresponding development standards with those specific uses permitted. And so the list of those specifically permitted uses and development standards, those are broadly characterized into different zones. The text of the bylaw is also accompanied by maps, which show the zoning categories that are used in the village and which properties that they're corresponding to. So if you want to know, okay, what is my property zone, you would first start by looking at the schedule. That would tell you where the property is zoned. And then you go and look in the provisions of the zoning bylaw. You can go to the next slide, please. So I think this is an important slide to go over a little bit. So this sets out what can zoning do and what can zoning not do. And so this slide kind of provides an overview of that information. Some of the things that zoning can do is it can set out the kinds of buildings that are built. It can set out where a building is built. It can set out how land is used and how things, such as yard setbacks, maximum heights, lot coverages, things like that are regulated. What zoning cannot do is control the appearance of buildings, regulate the use of public roads, and it cannot dictate who lives in a neighborhood, or construction practices, which would otherwise be associated with the Ontario Building Code. Next slide, please. So this slide kind of gives you a snapshot of the table of contents that forms part of the draft zoning bylaw document. It follows a similar structure to most zoning bylaws. And there's a section, on interpretation, you have a section on definitions, general provisions, specific use provisions, and then you actually go into the categories themselves. And then, of course, it's followed by a schedule. You can go to the next slide, please. So this slide in front of you shows the Schedule A of the draft zoning bylaw. Might be able to notice here that this schedule corresponds a lot with the official plan designation map that Steve just showed you moments ago. And that's because, as we talked about before, the zoning bylaw is meant to implement the official plan. We can go to the next slide, please. So now I'm going to go through an overview of some of the changes, and I appreciate that some of you may have already looked at the zoning bylaw document, but I think that this would be helpful to kind of set the context for what's changing. So section 2 is the definition section that carries forward many of the definitions from the current zoning bylaw. Some of those definitions have been revised for clarity and to update language to comply with current legislation. And then in other cases, new definitions have been added as part of sort of modernizing the bylaw and bringing it into compliance with current legislation. Next slide, please. So section 3 covers general provisions. I know that might be a little bit difficult to see, but it covers the same kind of content as what the existing document covers, with some of those provisions having been revised. So notable sections that have been revised includes things related to accessory uses, which have been replaced with some more robust regulatory provisions. New parking rates have been added. Exemptions have also been added, and yard setback provisions have been, or rather, encroachments into yard setbacks have been strengthened. Next slide, please. So section 4 provides, obviously relates to specific use provisions, and so there's new provisions in there for additional residential units and coach houses. So now 2 additional residential uses are permitted on urban service lots, and that aligns with new provincial legislation. And so new performance standards are correspondingly provided for these ARUs. And then new provisions have also been provided for short-term rentals on lots with public street access, and provisions to regulate outdoor commercial patios. Next slide, please. So in terms of residential zones, so new residential zone categories have been added and performance standards have been updated. There are now 3 residential zone categories. So the R1 zone is intended for detached, semi-detached, and duplex dwellings. And that has actually been broken down now into further subzones. And those subzones are based on whether the lot has full services, partial municipal services, or is on the basis of private services. There's a new R2 zone, which is intended for triplex and townhouse dwellings. And then there's a new R3 zone, and that is intended for apartment dwellings. And a separate limited service residential zone has been created to recognize waterfront lots within the village that are not on improved streets. Next slide, please. So in terms of commercial zones, the highway commercial zone has been carried forward, and that's intended for larger commercial uses along county roads in the village. We've added a new designation, and that's for local commercial zones, and that's to recognize some of the smaller commercial zone properties that are located outside of the village core. And then finally, the village core zone, which is based on the village core and harborfront designation in the official plan. some of those lands, were previously, most of those lands, as you would have seen, were previously in the central commercial zone. There are some lands that were previously outside the central commercial zone, and those have been brought into the village core zone based on official plat mapping. And the intent of that village commercial zone, or village core zone, is to allow a mix of uses. It's a bit more permissive, provides a maximum front yard setback, and all of that is provided in consistency with the official plan. Next slide, please. So these are just some of the other zones that the zoning bylaw covers. Institutional zones have been proposed to be carried over, with public uses such as village infrastructure being proposed in all zones. An open space zone is proposed to permit passive recreation with a few structures, and there is an exception zone for the arena right here. The sewage treatment facility zone will recognize lands associated with a sewage treatment facility, with the sewage treatment facility in the village. The rural zone is to permit low intensity uses on private services, and the development reserve zone is intended to safeguard land for future development, permitting only existing uses and conservation uses and excluding buildings. Next slide, please. So this table, I think is quite helpful to show the official plan designations that you would have heard from my colleague, Mr. Pence. And then it goes on to kind of show how does that translate into zones in the zoning bylaw. So this kind of, table really summarizes that well. You'll see what's in the general urban designation here with all those residential zones, local commercial, highway, commercial, institutional, open space. And then obviously, as I was talking about before, with the village core and harborfront being translated now to the village core zone, and on and on. Next slide, please. So in terms of next steps, so the current step that we're on is to hear, public comments and feedback on the zoning bylaw. It's to hear from you, and to be able to take the feedback that we hear from you into consideration for the next final draft, I would say, of the zoning bylaw. And so what we intend to do is to collect this feedback and hear your comments, and then reflect that in a final draft that would then eventually go to council at a future meeting for a decision. Next slide, please. And that's it for my presentation.
Thank you so much, Arja. All right, yeah. Okay. All right, so let's start where we left off. We've received some written reports. Is there anybody in the of the group that has not yet submitted a written report that would like to speak? Please go ahead, Mr. Kadrimpa. I saw you waving at me, so I texted you saying, I don't know what you mean. Oh, okay, thank you. It's not a closed door meeting. Go ahead, Casey.
I'm Casey Kadrinko, along with my partner Martha. We own several businesses in town, including Kadrinko's, a grocery store. Please just call me Casey, not Mr. So I'm non-trans, non-binary, so just get that on the records. If you have to use honorarium mixes, MX is fine. I am speaking today in regards to the proposal in the new planning bylaw to ban all storage containers of sea cans in the village. I have a sea can. You may not know that. When I tore down the old garage that was on the back of Jim McCauley's property that was rotten and full of raccoons, and I could no longer use to store bottled water because it posed a health risk to the public, I needed somewhere to store water. We sell about 10 tractor trailer loads of water a year, a lot of it in the summer. A lot of it is those big 18-liter bottles that are refillable from Lanark Water, and this time of year we're going through about 8 to 10 skids a week. And so it's not a terribly profitable part of my business, to be honest with you. I hate the 500 ml bottles. Some people buy them. I don't judge them for that. It's their choice. A full pallet of 24 by 500 ml water with 84 cases on it has a cost of, to me, of $250. And so when you factor that out as selling it at $4.49 when I'm paying $3.40 for it, I'm making $84 on the skid.
To get rid of sea cans, I would need storage space. If you want your local grocery store serving this tourist town. And people who cannot drink our town water because of the sodium levels. And people who need distilled water for CPAP machines. I need storage. We have no land set aside in our plan for industrial warehouse. There is no warehousing here. There's no land set aside to build a warehouse. So if you go to Township of Greater Lakes, or good friends just outside the village, and say, I want to build a warehouse, where should I build a warehouse? They will tell you that the trailer country property, they're on Highway 15, as you go into Smiths Falls. Behind there, that is the land that is set aside for industrial uses in the Township of Greater Lakes. So I'd be trucking daily in order to avoid, I'd be trucking water daily from Smiths Falls, a much higher cost to the environment in terms of fuel and cost of trying to transport that product. I would stop carrying bottled water if I don't have a place to store it. It's plain and simple. And that would be absolutely disastrous. Not only because tourists and people living in rural areas, and myself included on a private well, need unfortunately safe, clean, drinkable water. But also because then, the alternative would be to install a reverse osmosis system and sell purified water from the town supply. Of course, the reverse osmosis program requires that you use water to remove the impurities and flush it down the drain. So distilled water, reverse osmosis water actually creates a ton of wastewater that would then go clean water that would be going into our wastewater system. Also, any water that I would sell would be consumed by people outside of the village who are going to pee in their toilets at home, going into their private septic systems. The water, we calculate the waste based on the water that we draw. And so that would also have an impact on that as well. So I can totally empathize with the issue of aesthetics around sea cans. There are others in the village as well, in the downtown. You don't see them because most of us have them in the back of our property where they're not viewed. I actually also have a plan currently to work with an engineer to install a brand new 40-foot insulated sea can with refrigeration on it because I need additional freezer space. I can do that for $40,000. The cost and the sunk carbon associated with building additional warehousing to do that is much higher. Sea cans do provide modular building systems, great opportunities to keep low costs for seasonal storage. I think when they're placed in the right place, for the right application, I think they're a very good mix for commercial settings. Totally can understand, we wouldn't want to see them out in front of businesses, unless it's like if you're doing a renovation, it's a very, temporary thing in your parking lot, okay? And also mine is beige, so match it, I bought it that color on purpose, so it would match the siding on the side of my building. If I built a square building with a flat roof on the exact same footprint with the same steel siding, it wouldn't look any different than a sea can. So bands, former deputy leader of the Green Party of Ontario, Green Party does not really believe in bans, believe it or not. We don't think they're productive. We think we need to foster conversations about good stewardship, about good planning, and then figure out a way forward that makes the most sense. And I think that that's one aspect of the plan that should be reviewed.
Yeah,
So
thank you so much. That was the value of a public meeting. Yeah, thank you. Anybody who's not put a submission in that would like to speak, and then I'll get to those who already have.
I haven't put a submission on
Okay.
this. I only have one question. That is, would CCAS be grandfathered? The existing CCAS be grandfathered?
So that's a question for the planners, but
Sure, yeah.
well, yeah. I don't really think they have to get up there. So you're okay, aren't you?
Yeah, so, yeah, so if you basically, if you have an existing CCAN, you would be able to enjoy legally non-conforming rights.
Right.
Yeah, obviously that doesn't cover Casey's.
No, I appreciate that, but.
Yes, if you've got one already and it was legally established, then yes.
Thanks,
There
Sarah.
was a conversation about case by case. on the
Sorry?
CCANs. There was a conversation about it being case by case on the CCANs, not like a rule. I mean, that's it,
So what you've heard to date was a different application
right?
for a specific property, and we've dealt with that a couple of weeks ago. What helped deal with that is this new bylaw. However, there's a separate section in the bylaw, the proposed bylaw about sea cans. So we're not going to debate, yes, this is a prohibition of sea cans in the core, in the bylaw. And part of the reason for the public meeting is to hear input. We've heard Casey's input. Believe me, we've heard that from a lot of other people as well, not just in written reports. So I'm sure you're going to see an amendment on that or change on that before it comes to council. Mr. Pence is nodding his head yes. Okay, John, do you want to go and then Robert? Rob?
Go first and once.
I'm fine. Bob, you want to go first and then, okay. Sorry?
There's a third person.
Okay, and Monica, all right.
My name's Bob Thompson. I live in Westport, 79 Concession Street, over behind the farm, all over that is, next to the SO. I'd like to speak on 2 points that with 2 hats on tonight. The first one, I'm a director of the Upper Rideau Lake Association, and we want to have a couple of comments on the zoning bylaw as it's written.
So there's just one question, sir, because we've had lots of input from Erla. Are you speaking on behalf of Erla here?
I am.
All right. So that we know that it's
Okay.
Erla who's speaking. Thank you.
And, okay, and then I'll switch hats. I'll let you know when I switch hats.
And this is different than what Erla's already put in?
Pardon?
And this is different than what Erla's already
It
said?
has not submitted a written application on this point, on the zoning bylaw, I don't believe.
Okay, I'm not being difficult. I just want to make sure we got you clear for the
We
record.
know where we're coming from, we've been here a lot, and I do have something written to submit to follow up on what I've said here.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
I must say that we're really encouraged by the official plans compelling environmental directions. And look forward and have seen that to be advanced by the zoning bylaw. As an environmentally conscious organization, we're really happy and really like to see that. We have 3 areas of concerns, only one of them is, well, I'll move on to that. The first area of concern that we have has to do with shoreline and waterfront use. Section 3.121, if you're reading it, that regulation creates, oh, here comes the rain, creates a 3-meter zone where occupancy of that area is limited to 20% of the shoreline frontage. That's a very good regulation, follows RVCA's recommendations. But our concern, and in that zone, marine and water-related activities, docks, access to marinas, pump houses, stairs, docks are permitted. What that section does not include is what might be the use or any use restrictions on the other 80% of the shoreline. And as an association of dealing with the lake, we think there are some possible negative actions that can happen that will have very negative actions towards lake health. All I need to do is mention hard rock riprap. That is not a good shoreline, and somebody could go in and do it under this bylaw. We would suggest that council consider RVA recommendations to use the other 80%, require the other 80% of the shoreline to be maintained and restoration of natural vegetated buffer. That is their suggestion of what should be there. And I might point out that it's also much more in line with the tree policy that you're going to talk about later and the regulations that appear there. The other issue, and I don't want to belabor it, we've already touched on it extensively tonight, has to do with stormwater management. And I commend the zoning bylaw for having a number of regulations that reduce this issue on properties that need to be developed. And we will comment that the village seems to be doing quite well in managing stormwater from private properties in the new development. and it works really well. We do have some concerns about the existing old Westport, or whatever you might call it. And suggest that maybe the village can consider some site plan controls for individual development properties, since you won't have the avenue of subdivision to control stormwater runoff from individual lots. We touched on this earlier tonight. I know how complex it is, and I just suggest maybe you want to look at that, and I don't want to offer any specific and of course, the need to make sure that your current standards of practice for sure stormwater management are current and accurate and work. That's not for the zoning bylaw, but it will have an effect on what the zoning bylaw does. The last comment we have was touched on by an earlier speaker, and that deals with the cumulative impact, environmental impact of development after many years. And it can be significant to Lake Hill. The official plan says, protect, improve, or restore water quality in our surrounding water bodies. We suggest that all development reviews include a summary of projected environmental impact. And from our perspective, the one thing that we would look to see is there a net environmental gain by this development? And ask that you review that with every development review. We really appreciate the chance to speak to the village on this. We're happy with this, and we'd like most aspects of the zoning bylaw, delighted with the official plan, and just want to work together with the village to make sure that we really have a timeless lakeside community. Village, excuse me. Now, I want to put on my other hat. As I mentioned, I own a property here in Westport. My wife and I, we've been here for a number of years. This new zoning bylaw proposes to rezone our property to something totally different. The RLS, Residential Limited Service Zone, will apply to our property. It is highly significant, restrictive regarding minimum lot area and the number of units allowed. This zone includes about 20 waterfront zone lots, which I heard earlier are there because village services are not available. That's not true of our lots. There are 4 lots in the village that do not have a public road access. Excuse me, there are 5. 4 that do not have public road access. 4 of those lots have water and sewer service provided by the village that are included in this area where it says these highly restrictive RLS conditions cannot apply.
Can be fixed.
The 3, and I want to speak to the 3 lots off west or south of Lakeview Drive, if you know where they are, behind the Mulville Farm. That's where it's best described. There are 3 lots there that are all about half an acre in size. We enjoy village water and village sewer, and we maintain a 1/4 mile private lane to get access to our property. I think we all have nice homes in there. They're all permanent homes. The RLS zoning, and this would have been a problem for us possibly, would prohibit us from adding a granny suite in our basement. Because no additional dwellings units are permitted in the RLS zone beyond the one that's there. And my wife and I went through a thing where we debated having her elderly mother live with us, and we could have converted our basement to a basement granny suite very easily. It's there. We wouldn't have added toilets. We wouldn't have added anything except just another body. And that would be prohibited under this new bylaw. We couldn't put another coach house, garden home or whatever on this lot. And it's a half-acre lot. And our lot and the three next to us all meet the R1 criteria for adding additional units. The only reason we couldn't do it is because the RLS doesn't allow us to do that. I would like you to consider that in rezoning and just extend the R1 zoning down Lake Shore Drive to include the three properties that I'm talking about.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good reason for a public meeting. Thanks, Bob. I don't know if it's as simple as snapping our fingers. You obviously, we were all nodding here. You raised
Yeah,
it.
well,
Thanks, Bob. Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Okay, I think we're getting there. John, and then Monica, and then we go into council, and you're all welcome to stay for that as well. Let me just stand up.
My name is John Bruss. Me and my wife own some properties in the edge of town here, on Concession Street, number 96, 98, 100 and 102. It's just down below Westport Lumber. And the zoning that, plan, I was having a talk with the assistant planner, the last open house. That discussed about the problem of what the planners decided to do with our property, and they put on, I wouldn't mind if you put it up there. What's on there is they want to put on the development to reserve. And I don't know why the planning department wants to do that to us, why the village wants to do it to us. But I feel like, seems like they want to put roadblocks in front of our development, our family, and doing things within this village. And I'm not happy about it, and I'm here
Can you
to
bring up
speak about this for the village.
the
About the
designation?
village, because this is not fair and right. And so basically, like, my understanding is, maybe I'd like to explain better, is if I want to develop my lots, I have to jump some more hoops, pay for a zoning change. And maybe may a change to the official plan. And right beside us is a residential unit. And our lots are residential lots, Crater's residential lots. And I know that it was categorized as highway commercial one time, or it'd be ideal highway commercial. I get that in the past, it would have been ideal, a gas station or some highway commercial business out there. But times have changed, and they've changed a lot over time. And by trying to force us to be highway commercial or any kind of commercial is backward thinking, it's not forward thinking. We have a building on Bedford Street. I think the Derbyshires originally built it, and made still ownership. And that building's still half empty, and it fell under the guidelines of being highway commercial. And we have now, I don't know how many empty buildings even on Concession Street. What used to be Bedores, rental unit, whatever it is, last units, it's sitting there empty. And then we have the bank now empty, and now we have the beer store empty. And you want me to develop my property so I can have empty buildings also? I have a real problem with that. I had a big discussion about this last open house, and I see nothing's changed. So I'm here to voice my opinion that I don't know why my development, my family, my property in town, which was built or designed as residential units, can't be used for exactly that. And why you planners are trying to push something on me that's totally bankrupting my family, bankrupt anybody that tries to develop their businesses. And I brought that up the last meeting. And, I'm a little more argumentative now because this is getting serious. Now you got another meeting saying my land still has to be development reserve. And yet again, all these empty buildings in town, beer store, that brand new Derbyshire property, half empty. Because you guys want to keep it highly commercial.
Okay,
So why would anybody?
just, I hear you. Just please don't make it
Okay,
personal.
okay. I'm sorry.
Your issue is you've been zoned,
There's a rezoning.
there's a proposal,
Development reserve,
proposal, right?
proposal, but I had to talk with the planner here at the last meeting. And
Okay.
it's still on the same thing. And what it does.
And I don't mean to interrupt
No,
you.
but-
This is a meeting where we
Yeah,
listen
no,
to you.
you're
There's
gonna
no
hear-
decisions. Okay.
So what I'm looking at is more costs to get to something that's should have been logically looked at and agreement with. This is perfect property for residential units. There's a need of residential. And why you want to put restrictions on my family, our lots, to say it should be highly commercial. We've got all these empty buildings already in town. Like, it's totally no sense. But I'm here trying to explain that, again, you're trying to designate property that's ideal, has a view of the lake, And I've had no inquiries over the years I've had for sale. But we thought we'd put a commercial unit ourselves originally as a real estate office, but the cost of bringing water and sewer out, it prohibits us from doing that. So I've got somebody now interested in looking at residential, and it's got the view. But to say that I have to jump through hoops, or my family has to jump through hoops to try to get it residential, when it's common sense, residential's the best thing for that circle. Yes, multiple residential would be nice too.
Okay,
I'm just kind of saying, this, especially when you've got these empty buildings.
okay.
Why would why would anybody want to go commercial there when there's absolutely no chance of survival? We've already got all these empty buildings already. I'm just saying, I talked to you about this. This is what bothers me. I talked about this. There's no change. I was trying to common sense. It wasn't upset, just talking to you, and yet nobody's listening. And I've also went through a process, and I know it's not exactly with this meeting, but it's cost me a lot of money based on lies from this department. And
Okay.
it cost me, I know,
All right.
but it's unfortunate. This is something that I feel like this is an ongoing problem that our family's getting. And so I know it feels personal. I'm sorry. And it shouldn't be personal. It should be proper planning. I'm talking about planning here. And so I'm just saying that force whoever owns these properties, ourselves in this area, to put highway commercial there when there's already empty buildings all over town.
Okay,
What's the common sense here?
we will hear the rationale
Thank
when
you.
it comes to committee as a
Yeah,
whole,
I'd love to hear it.
and that is going to be 1st of September. Committee of the whole, 1st of September. Okay, so you got the date.
Thank you.
Okay, John, thank you for coming. And Monica, you go ahead, please.
I'm Monica Ferenzi, 46 Bedford Street. I wanted to note and appreciate that since the open house, there's been a new draft document and a summary document, which I had requested. And that has greatly enhanced the ease of understanding the changes in the bylaw. And that's very much appreciated. My oral submission will focus on 3 points. 1, amendments to zoning bylaw, paragraph 1.8. 2, the definition of open space, 9.4. And how it is currently ambiguously represented between the official plan, Schedule A, and the zoning bylaw, Schedule A. And 3, the need for an urban design guideline clause to be added to the bylaw, section 10.5, with respect to protecting streetscapes, built heritage in terms of street facing, height restriction, and building materials to align with the village official plan. 1.8, request for amendment to zoning bylaw, page 2. Paragraph 4, every request for an amendment to the zoning bylaw shall be accompanied by the corporation's application form, which shall be completed in full and accompanied by the required application fee, as well as such supporting materials as may be determined through consultation with the corporation. I am requesting that wording be amended to as required under the United Counties of Leeds and Granville Official Plan and its document regulations, Village of Westport Official Plan, Ontario's Planning Act, Conservation Authority Consultation and Regulations, Drinking Water Protection Zones Regulation, and Environmental Impact Assessment Report, in addition to certified engineering, architectural, public works, and planning consultation reports. The rationale for this change is that consultation is insufficient to meet the threshold of due diligence when there are legislative and regulatory requirements related to zoning changes that must be addressed by applicants. 9.4, major open space. It is stated in the Village of Westport Official Plan 2024 on page 43, 9.4.1, that the intent of the designation is that the major open space has been placed on crown lands lying generally north and northwest of the Westport Pond. The designation also includes municipal lands containing the village's community center and municipal park near the center of the village. The intent of the designation is to identify notable lands, both in terms of size and function, that contribute to the village natural heritage and recreational amenity space value and importance. The designation generally applies to lands that are either not readily suitable for development by virtue of their current crown land status and or physical characteristics, or as in the case of the municipal park, lands that are under municipal ownership and which provide essential community programming and recreational amenity functions. It is a goal of the village to pursue the acquisition of crown lands within the designation such that all lands within the major open space designation are under the control of the village. The current definition in the proposed bylaw is not aligned with the official plan's definition of open space. On page 14, the definition states open space shall mean unoccupied space open to the sky on the same lot with the building. My request is to align the draft Schedule A of the draft bylaw to the village's official plan. And particularly in that it impacts the way my property is represented as urban and zoned R1 and not open space in the area bordering Westport Pond, for the reason that I hold title and deed to these lands, and so that it aligns with the definition of major open space in Schedule A of the official plan of the village. So visually speaking, we have the Schedule A of the official plan with 2 green open space areas identified, and the Schedule A draft of the bylaw with numerous open space designations, one of which is my property. 10.5, site planning and design guidelines. In the Village of Westport official plan, 1, a comprehensive zoning bylaw is a major tool in the implementation of an official plan and sets any quantitative type performance standards that are important in achieving the village's development objectives. It is also recognized that site planning and architectural design are important and complementary components in a successful official plan implementation strategy. It is primarily through meticulous attention to site planning and architectural elements that qualitative matters related to development are addressed. 2, in recognition of the importance of good site planning, and in order to ensure that site plan control applications adequately address the technical requirements and design objectives of the village, the site plan application guidelines may be developed. These guidelines would be used as a tool by both applicants and approval authorities for the preparation and processing of applications respectively. The guidelines would address various functional, safety, aesthetic, and other issues relevant to the appropriate development of various land uses. 3, in addition to developing site plan guidelines, the village may prepare urban design guidelines for specific areas of the village, such as the village core and harborfront area. I am requesting through this oral submission that urban design guidelines be formally incorporated into the draft zoning bylaw as an integral component in zoning applications in all areas of the village urban designated area. Thank you for your consideration of these requests, and a copy of this oral submission is available for the record.
Thank you so much, Monica.
Thank
Okay. Going once, it looks like we've reached the end of our questions. Let me get my notes here from Kim. All right, so thank you, everybody, for participating and hanging in there. We're going to take, I'm going to adjourn, and we're going to take a break so council can get a stretch, and then we'll go into our council meeting. As always, you're always welcome to stay for council. And it's moved by Councillor Card, seconded by, yes. It's moved by Councillor Card, seconded by Councillor Aragona, that the public meeting be adjourned at 7:20.